Namaskar to all of you and welcome to our next session on the yogic life. So before we actually go back to our Karapatram, I wanted to talk a little bit about bhakti and prema for Paramapurusha. So we've been saying that sadhana is the way through which you can attain Paramapurusha, through which you can have the sakshatkara of Paramapurusha. But the thing is that sadhana is useless if there is no bhakti bhava for Paramapurusha. If there is no prema for Paramapurusha, then the sadhana is also a useless endeavor, right? So in sadhana, you're repeating your own mantra throughout the sadhana. But then if you repeat the mantra without having the deep love for Paramapurusha, then it just becomes a mechanical exercise. Then it's like yantravat. It's just like a machine, right? Or it is like the talk of a parrot, right? So I'm sure you've heard a parrot talk, right? A parrot says so many things without understanding the meaning, right? Without understanding the spirit or the sense of what it is saying. So during sadhana, when you do the japa kriya, if you don't have the bhakti bhava for Paramapurusha, and if you're mechanically repeating something, then the japa kriya also becomes meaningless. The sadhana becomes useless. So, and then it loses its its value when it is required, right? So like for instance, in the case of a parrot, it learns so many things, it just keeps repeating. If somebody says something, it keeps repeating the same thing after them. But then when let's say that there is a cat which is trying to catch this parrot and it has caught hold of this parrot, and this parrot it was saying, before the cat caught it was constantly saying Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna. But then when the cat actually caught it, it doesn't remember, it doesn't understand the meaning, so it's not going to say Radhe Krishna. It's just going to say, it's just going to it's just going to shout, that's all. Twink, 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 it's going to shout, that's all. And it's not going to say Radhe Krishna. So it was saying Radhe Krishna throughout for a very long time, but how come it is not remembering when it is absolutely required, right? When it is actually going to die now, because the cat has caught hold of it, is going to die now, but it's not remembering Radhe Krishna, right? So it's not remembering Paramapurusha. So same thing when you're doing japa kriya, if you're doing it mechanically without having that relationship with Paramapurusha, without having that bhakti bhava with Paramapurusha, then it just becomes like this parrot, and that japa kriya is actually useless because there is no love for Paramapurusha. So same thing when you do dhyana also, it is the same thing. So when you're doing dhyana, there's a specific procedure for doing dhyana, and when you're doing dhyana, you're withdrawing all your propensities from external objects, external entities, and you're collecting all your mental vrittis, and you're diverting those vrittis into unto Paramapurusha. Even during the process of dhyana, if you don't have bhakti bhava, there is no prema for Paramapurusha, then how will the mind run after that Paramapurusha? How that Paramapurusha will become the Vishaya of dhyana? So then dhyana also becomes useless, sadhana also becomes useless. So what is the main thing is the bhakti bhava, is the prema, right? So when somebody engages in the yogic life and also has this prema for bhakti bhava, even a little bit of prema for bhakti bhava, prema for Paramapurusha, little bit of bhakti for Paramapurusha, then he gains a lot, he has a lot of agragati. But without the bhakti bhava, without the prema for Paramapurusha, he won't get anything. So you might have acquired a lot of laukika vidya, like worldly things. You might have knowledge of worldly things, but then but if you don't have the bhakti bhava, then those worldly knowledge is useless, and also without that bhakti bhava you will not get Paramapurusha. So with the power of love you can get Paramapurusha, right? So even though you might not know so many things, but even like, for instance, even like a villager, right, who doesn't have a lot of education, he's not literate, but even then if he has deep love for Paramapurusha and he engages in this yogic life, he does this sadhana with deep attraction towards Paramapurusha, that akarshanam is there, then his dhyana, then his sadhana, and the whole yogic life becomes meaningful, right? So, what kind of prema we should have for Paramapurusha, what kind of bhakti bhava we should have for Paramapurusha. So there are different kinds of bhakti bhava you can have for Paramapurusha, but ultimately, people might, have the different kinds of bhakti. It can be the satviki bhakti, rajasiki bhakti, tamasiki bhakti, and then raganuka bhakti and ragatmika bhakti. So there are like 5 types of bhakti. So a satviki bhakti is what is that somebody who's not able to enjoy these worldly objects because his organs, his physical organs are not functioning well, right? Such a person, he's not able to enjoy the worldly objects because his organs are not functioning, and so he is now calling Paramapurusha, and he is saying that kindly give me mukti. I don't want to live in this world. Give me mukti. The reason why he's asking for mukti is because because his organs are not functioning and he's in pain and suffering, so calling out Paramapurusha, asking for mukti. But really, if all his organs were all functioning properly, then maybe he would not ask for Paramapurusha. That is a satviki bhakti. And then rajasiki bhakti is a very worldly bhakti. You're asking, oh, I want this, I want more money, I want more fame, my son should get a good job, my daughter should get educated, or my daughter should get married, my son should get married. So these are all rajasiki bhakti, right? So it is like give and take. It's like a business. So you give me this, and then I'll do this. I'll do your bhakti if you give me this. That is rajasiki bhakti. Tamasiki bhakti is that you're praying that your enemy should be killed or your enemy should die, right? So that kind of bhakti is tamasiki bhakti. So this satviki, rajasiki, tamasiki bhakti, these are all worldly bhakti. These are not really bhakti, right? These people acknowledge that there is Paramapurusha exists, but they really don't have the true love for Paramapurusha. But then when we come to the raganuka bhakti, there what it is, you have deep love for Paramapurusha. You don't want any worldly things in this raganuka bhakti. This is also a high form of bhakti. You don't want worldly things, but what you want is you want to love Paramapurusha because it gives you pleasure, right? It's giving you pleasure. You're getting that ananda, you're getting that bliss by loving Paramapurusha, by having that bhakti bhava. Therefore you're engaging in that bhakti bhava, right? You're expecting something. You're loving Paramapurusha, you have deep love for Paramapurusha, but you're expecting something in return. You're expecting that I should get pleasure. Are you engaging in that bhakti bhava because you're getting that pleasure, right? That is the 5th stage of bhakti, the 4th stage of bhakti. The 5th stage of bhakti is the ragatmika bhakti. Ragatmika bhakti is a bhakti where you don't have any expectation. You don't have expectation. You just love Paramapurusha. You have bhakti bhava for Paramapurusha, and you're not wanting anything. You're not even wanting the pleasure. What you're wanting is that you're loving Paramapurusha so that Paramapurusha gets pleasure. Let him enjoy the bliss. I don't even want the bliss. I don't want anything in return, right? So that is the purest form of bhakti, the highest form of bhakti. So there, you say that, I love you not for myself. I love you because I want that my love should give you pleasure. That is called as the ragatmika bhakti, the highest form of bhakti. So essentially what we are saying is that we should have bhakti bhava. We should have bhakti bhava for Paramapurusha. But in the ultimate stage, a sadhaka who is engaged in spiritual life, and in the final stages, he would have this, if he engages in this yogic life, slowly he progresses, and when he progresses, he finally reaches that state of the ragatmika bhakti, where he has pure bhakti for Paramapurusha. He is not expecting anything in return. He is expecting that my bhakti gives pleasure to Paramapurusha. I don't want even that pleasure. I don't want anything. So there is no selfishness at all, right? If there is any bit of selfishness remaining, then you cannot have aikyam with Paramapurusha. You cannot become one with Paramapurusha. You should not have any selfishness, little bit also, because your individuality itself is not there. In ragatmika bhakti, you don't feel that you're separate from Paramapurusha. You don't have an individual existence. You don't have this Rama, Shama, Gita, Lakshmi. That kind of individual existence is not there. All that you can think about is your love, deep love for Paramapurusha. That is the state that we all want to reach, that pure state where you have that pure love for Paramapurusha. And when you reach that state, then there is no stopping. Aikyam with Paramapurusha is guaranteed, right? So that is in the last phase, in the final phase of a sadhaka's life. His only mission is to give pleasure to Paramapurusha. So actually in Sanskrit, to give pleasure, to give pleasure, for this we use this guptatu. Gup means to give pleasure, right? So a person who has developed this kind of a bhakti bhava for Paramapurusha, where he wants to give pleasure to Paramapurusha, he is called as a gopaha. Gopaha means one who gives pleasure to Paramapurusha, one who gives pleasure to Lord Krishna, one who gives pleasure to Paramapurusha is gopaha. Gopaha does not mean one who is looking after the cows. One who is looking after the cows is not called a gopa. Gopa means one who is giving pleasure, to, and a gopa is a person who gives pleasure to Paramapurusha. He gives pleasure to Krishna, so he is called as a gopaha. So we all want to become gopaha. We want to become the gopas, right? So we want to raise to that state of becoming a gopa, where we don't want anything in return. We don't want not wanting laukika things is the first thing. I don't want anything in this, any worldly object. That is the first thing. And the second thing is, I don't even want the pleasure. I have this bhakti bhava for Paramapurusha because I am in state of bliss. I'm getting pleasure. No, I don't even want that. That is the final stage. And such a person who is only there to give pleasure to Paramapurusha, who is serving the society, who is doing seva, and he is doing that seva with a pure heart, not wanting anything in return. Only a sadhaka can do that, right? Without a selfish endeavor, doing seva is only possible by a sadhaka who is engaged in this yogic life, not by anybody else, right? So in the world, when you try to do seva, there's always something you have deep, some intention that you want something in return. You give money, you want something. You give money, you want everybody to know that you gave money. Or you served somebody, you want everybody to know that you served somebody. Yeah, I'm great, I'm Mahan, I've served these people. So every time when we do the seva, we have the selfish endeavor. No matter what, somewhere there is a hidden corner, there is a selfish endeavor. But a sadhaka who is engaged in yogic life, who is doing sadhana regularly, his mind will elevate in such a manner, he will do the pure Shuddha seva without expecting anything in return. Not expecting anything in return. You're doing seva because it is pleasing Paramapurusha. It is also part of the Ragatmika Bhakti. It is serving Paramapurusha. It is the intention is that, so that let Paramapurusha be happy with my bhakti. Let Paramapurusha be happy with my bhakti. Where we do the bhakti bhava for Paramapurusha, that is where Paramapurusha will be there. That is where Hari Parimandala will be there. Where you are doing the bhakti of Paramapurusha, that is where Hari will be there, right? So the crux of is this whatever I talked about in the last 10 minutes or so, is that all of you should learn sadhana. First you should learn sadhana. You should come to the Varanasi yogic shivir, which is going to happen in December. Learn sadhana, and when you learn sadhana, also have this love for Paramapurusha, deep bhakti bhava for Paramapurusha. Without bhakti, then you'll be a dry sadhaka. We don't want to be a dry sadhaka, just repeating like a parrot. No, we don't want to do that. We want to do that. We want to have a personal relationship with Paramapurusha. We want to have a personal relationship with Paramatma. So Paramatma is mine. The feeling of he is only mine. He is not anybody else. For anything else, when we say, oh, this object is only mine, not somebody else. Oh, it belongs to me. I possess this. When you say that there is a selfish endeavor. But when you say that, Paramapurusha is only mine, he belongs to me, when you say that, there is no selfish endeavor. It is your deep love for that entity. So when you have that kind of deep personal relationship where you can have that conversation with him, you can tell him anything you want. Whatever is there in your heart, you can share that with Paramapurusha. There are certain secrets you cannot share with people in your life, or even your close friends, close family members, even to husband or to wife or to children. Some things you don't feel comfortable sharing with those people, even though they are very very close to you. But with Paramapurusha, he is even more closer. So you can tell him, and he has no pakshapata. He will listen to you very very patiently, and he will guide you. He will guide you in the right direction. If you give that trust, if you have that trust in Paramapurusha, it is like, you know, I nothing is in my hands. That Sharanagati is very important. And as part of the Bhakti Bhava, the Sharanagati is important. It's not like I have everything under my control. My hand is empty. I came into this world without anything in my hands. I didn't even have a piece of thread on my body. I came like that, and when I'm going to go like that. Then when you're living in this world, why do we have like attachment for so many things? Why do we say this belongs to me? This belongs to me. You say that, right? So that kind of, when you have this bhakti bhava, then this feeling of this mamakara for the worldly objects will all go away slowly. So the more your bhakti increases for Paramapurusha, the more you engage in this yogic life, the more you do sadhana with the bhakti bhava for Paramapurusha, then one is going to become a gopaha. When you become a gopaha, one who gives pleasure to Paramatma. Okay, so this is what I wanted to talk today. Actually, in the last class there was a question regarding Akasha Tattva. I will actually talk about that in the next class, because Chandramouli Mohdaya is not there today. I'll talk about it in the next class. Now we can actually go back to our pravachan. What is this world? So I'm going to share my screen. Just a second. So in the Shristi chakra, we saw the process of how the process of Shristi happens in the last class. So as part of the Shristi chakra, I wanted to actually clarify one thing, is that we talked about this at the Kshiti Tattva level at 6 o'clock. We said that, you know, in the Kshiti Tattva there is this Kendra Nuga and Kendra Tiga Shakti, right? So, and if the Kendra Nuga Shakti is predominant, then life emerges, and if Kendra Tiga Shakti is predominant, then it goes back, there is a Jadaspotaha, and those they actually go back to the basic tattvas. They go back to the basic tattvas, to the Panchabhutas. We talked about that. So also I wanted to one thing I wanted to mention is that even the Prakriti has this Kendra Nuga and Kendra Tiga Shakti. The Prakriti also has this Kendra Nuga and Kendra Tiga Shakti. So there are 4 Shaktis, 2 at the macro level of the Shristi chakra, and those 2 Kendra Nuga Kendra Tiga Shakti belongs to Prakriti, and 2 Shakti at the micro level of the Kshiti Tattva. So that I wanted to clarify. The Prakriti's Kendra Nuga Kendra Tiga Shakti, the Kendra Tiga Shakti is a Shakti which of the Prakriti which helps in the Sanchara Dhara, going from the subtle to the crude, and the Kendra Nuga Shakti, Kendra Tiga Shakti helps in the Sanchara Dhara, and Kendra Nuga Shakti helps in the Prati Sanchara Dhara, moving from the crude to the subtle. That Shakti of the Prakriti helps us. When we engage in sadhana, the Kendra Tiga Shakti of Prakriti aids us in moving towards the subtle. So there are actually 4 Shaktis, 2 Shaktis at the Kshiti Tattva level, micro level, 2 at the macro level. So I wanted to clarify that, right? And also that, you know, as I was saying, that the Sattva Guna is predominant from 12 to 1 o'clock, Rajoguna is predominant from 1 to 2 o'clock, Sattva Guna is predominant from 12 to 1 o'clock when the Mahatattva comes, and then Rajoguna is predominant from 1 to 2 o'clock where the Aham Tattvam comes, and then from 2 to 6 o'clock actually Tamoguna is predominant, right? And then from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock again Sattva Guna is predominant. So at 6 o'clock, in the absence of congenial conditions, when the pressure of Tamoguna keeps increasing and increasing at 6 o'clock on the Kshiti Tattva, and if there is no congenial condition, then what happens? There is a Vispota, Jadaspotaha. and in the presence of congenial conditions, then sattva guna becomes predominant, right? And there is an emergence of life, right? There's emergence of life. So I wanted to clarify that. And now actually going back to our Karapatram, we actually talked in the process of the Shristi chakra. We said that after the chitta is formed at 3 o'clock, from the chitta, this universe, from this chitta, the panchabhutas and the pancha tanmatranis get created. And the first panchabhuta is the akasha tattva. Akasha tattva, we said akasha tattva contains the shabda tanmatra. It is, even though it is crude, even though the akasha tattva is crude, it doesn't have anything, it contains nothing, it is crude, but even then the shabda tanmatra goes through it. We said that. Then again, due to the pressure of the tamoguna on the chitta, then from the akasha tattva, vayu tattva gets created. Vayu tattva is more cruder compared to akasha tattva, because there are two tanmatras, the shabda and sparsha tanmatra. And further, when the tamoguna of prakriti further has the pressure of tamoguna increases, then what happens next is the agni tattva. Agni tattva comes, tejas tattva comes. So that is having rupa, sparsha and shabda. It also has rupa. So it is comparatively cruder when compared to akasha and vayu tattva. And then we the next one is the jala tattva. So I think we have to start from the jala tattva. So okay, Pushpalata Bhagini, you want to take it?
Bhagini, but we have finished up to Shiti Tattva, no, last time.
Oh, we also finished the Shiti Tattva?
Yes.
Okay.
That one. That's paragraph.
Okay.
One
okay. Okay. So, okay, yes, that is right. It has come to my memory. That is correct. So we talked about the Jala Tattva. Jala Tattva also is cruder. When the pressure of tamoguna increases, then Jala Tattva comes Jala Tattva gets created. It also has the rasa tanmatra, rupa rasa shabda sparsha, and it is cruder compared to the other bhutas. Then finally the kshiti tattva, the solid factor, comes during the pressure of tamoguna increases, and this one also has gandha in addition to the other tanmatras. It has all the 5 tanmatras. Kshiti tattva has all the 5 tanmatras, rupa rasa gandha sparsha shabda. Therefore it is the crudest of all compared to the rest of them, right? And so the kshiti tattva, the tamoguna has reached its peak when the kshiti tattva is created, right? That is the final stage. That is the final panchabhuta. It is the final stage of transformation from the subtle to the crude. That is the final stage where the chitta is manifested as the kshiti tattva or the prithvi tattva or the solid factor. So now we can go to the next paragraph. Okay, Bhagini, read this.
It is due to the psychic survey of the
psychic survey
of the supreme qualified entity that this creation has gradually been transformed from the subtle to the crude. Its chitta, according to the thought waves of its aham tattva, has gradually changed from the subtle to the crudest form, Shiti tattva. As it has all the 5 tanmatras, Shiti tattva is the crudest form and inanimate object. It has already been seen that in chitta there is only a gradual metamorphosis of the Purusha. When Purusha was qualified by Prakriti, it assumed the form of chitta, and it is this chitta that has become inanimate as the crudest Shiti tattva. This consciousness, upon being qualified by Prakriti, has manifested itself as an inanimate object and has surely reached the ultimate end in that direction. In this changed condition, consciousness has become absolutely as crude as an inanimate object. There could be nothing cruder than this. It is under the extreme or greatest influence of Prakriti that cosmic consciousness has reached the stage of an inanimate object as the crudest form of matter. In qualifying Purusha or cosmic consciousness to drive it to the extreme of crudeness, the capacity of the qualifying principle, guna, is used up completely, and Prakriti is unable to qualify Purusha further in that direction. Thus, in Shiti Tattva, both Prakriti and Purusha have become inanimate. Purusha cannot become cruder, and Prakriti cannot qualify him any further to make himself still cruder. When Purusha and Prakriti have both reached their limits of manifestation, the question arises: if this is the end if this is the end of creation? Another question also arises about the presence of animate objects like plants and animals. If Shiti Tattva is the final stage of creation, these if Shiti Tattva is the final stage of creation, these do not appear anywhere in the formation of creation from subtle into crude. How and when this were formed is a very pertinent question. So, first, Bhagini, inanimate is anything which has no life or something like that. So what do you define inanimate as?
Inanimate means it's not a jiva. Jiva is animate, right? Inanimate means it doesn't have life or
no life. So now from the previous paragraph, it is due to the cyclic survey of the supreme qualified entity that this creation has gradually been transformed from the subtle to the crude. Its chitta, according to the thought waves of the Aham Tattva, has gradually changed from the subtle to the crudest form, Shiti Tattva. As it has all the five tanmatras, Shiti Tattva is the crudest form, it says. Also, we see that the chitta, there is only a metamorphosis, gradual metamorphosis of the Purusha by when it is qualified by Prakriti. It assumes the form of the chitta, and this chitta has become the inanimate object or the Shiti Tattva form. So now this consciousness, the consciousness in the Purusha is qualified and it's becoming the crudest form. It assumes the inanimate form and it becomes the Shiti Tattva. So after this, the Purusha cannot become cruder, and also the Prakriti is not able to qualify further after this. And it cannot influence Purusha, and as Purusha has reached its final form, and it has become the Shiti Tattva. Now it has become Shiti Tattva, the crudest form, but now a question is arising. So all these are inanimate. Then there is also, we know there is animate objects available, that is the plants and animals. Then when does this gets created? When Shiti Tattva is the end, is assumed to be the end. So this question arises, and how this evaluation of plants and animals begin. So this is told in this paragraph.
Nicely said, Panni. Yes, thank you. So yeah, so that is the idea. Very nicely said. So this is actually a psychic survey. So what do we mean by psychic survey? So we mean that this entire Shristi process is happening in the mind of the cosmic. It's happening in the cosmic mind of Paramapurusha. It is happening in the mind of Paramapurusha. So it's happening in the cosmic mind. So the entire thing is a psychic survey, is a psychic projection of Paramapurusha, in which the Aham Tattva is seeing all the Shristi within its mind on the chitta. So Paramapurusha is seeing all this on its own chitta, which is like a movie screen of the mind. This this transformation from the chitta into matter, right? So the starting point is, all of this started from the Purusha, and Purusha transformed himself into chitta, and then chitta into matter. So we are seeing this incredible transformation from Purusha to Chitta Tattva to stone, right? Everything is happening in the cosmic mind of Saguna Brahma. So that is what is called as a psychic survey. Everything is happening in the mind. Everything is in the mind, right? Everything which is happening here is mind. Everything is mind, right? So it is a psychic survey, and at the same time it is happening. It is not just fake, right? All of this is happening. It is happening in the cosmic mind, and so it is really happening. The creation is happening. We have the creation of matter out of Purusha within the Chitta, within the cosmic mind. Okay, so that is what this paragraph is saying. So the question now is, so far we are from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, we have seen the movement, we have seen the sanchar dhara, we have seen the movement from the subtle Purusha, who is subtle, to the crudest, which is the Kshiti Tattva, matter, right? So from the movement from subtle to crude, so far we have not seen the creation of the animate things, we have only seen the inanimate things. So then the question is, when exactly the animate things get created, right? And how do they get created? So that is what is going to be talked in the further paragraph. So Chandrasekhar Mohan, do you want to take the next one?
Good, Bhagini. Thank you. The greater influence of Prakriti makes Purusha consciousness cruder. Where her influence is less, he is subtler. It is because of this that the extreme influence of Prakriti makes consciousness absolutely inanimate in the solid factor. The solid factor, Shristi Tattva, appears inanimate at the very sight of it. The influence of Prakriti has hence reached its climax. Plants and animals cannot be said to be inanimate. Consciousness is reflected in them. They originate from these rudimental factors. That is, the Chitta of Saguna Brahma, the supreme qualified entity, which manifested itself as Shristi Tattva, now takes form.
Sthiti Tattva. Sthiti Tattva.
Sthiti Tattva.
Sakara, Shakara. Sthiti Tattva.
Sthiti Tattva.
Sthiti. Okay. Sthiti Tattva. Or you can call it as Prithvi Tattva.
I was trying to get the Kshi in the front, and it's just
Kshiti Tattva. Yeah. Like Meenakshi, you say, right? Kshi.
Yeah. Kshiti Tattva. Now takes the form of plants and animals. It is because of this that creation is said to be formed out of the body of Brahma. Shristi Tattva is inanimate, but the plants and the animals which have originated from it have reflected consciousness and are not inanimate. They are surely more subtle than Shristi Tattva. Shristi Tattva must have been formed before these, as plants and animals have been formed out of it. They do not appear anywhere in creation up to the formation of Shristi Tattva. The fact that plants and animals are more subtle than Shristi Tattva suggests that after creation reaches its crudest form, its Shristi Tattva, it then advances towards subtle forms. So in this, it's as we've seen before, that the crudest form, the transformation or manifestation to the crudest form is ending in the inanimate, which is the end of that transformation line from subtle to cruder and cruder, and the crudest being the solid factor, the Kshiti Tattva. Then it seems like now it's going back from there to subtler form, the first subtle of that being plants and animals, and that progression are the manifestations going to continue into human beings as well, which is getting subtler from the crudest form of Shristi Tattva. In a sense, then, this is saying that you have to get to that before it starts becoming less crude or a little bit more subtle, because it's implying that the plants and the animals need the Prithvi to be created. So is that the cycle that you were referring to, from going from 6 o'clock back towards 12?
Yes.
So now
Yes,
this in this one paragraph, it's just leading up to the plants and animals, the subtle form being formed from from the Shristi Tattva. The thing that's a little confusing here is to say that it's the consciousness is reflected in plants and animals. It is, but then it's also reflected in the Prithvi itself, because there's nothing that where Paramapurusha is not reflected. I mean, there's a line that here it says that from it have reflected consciousness. Yes, animals and plants have reflected consciousness, but so does the inanimate objects.
That is correct. But it looks inanimate, right? Even though, like, if those who don't know anything about all of this, they're looking at a stone, they feel it is lifeless, right? A stone is lifeless. It doesn't have life. It doesn't have anything. It's just so inanimate, just sitting there, right? That is how we view it. But somebody who knows that this whole Shristi has originated from Paramapurusha, knows that everything is Brahma. Even a speck of dust is Brahma. They know it, right?
Everything
you're absolutely right.
Reflected consciousness.
Right? Yes, you're absolutely right. That is correct. Yeah, nicely said, Maurya. Thank you so much. Actually, this paragraph is very, very important. It is incredibly important, right? And we have talked about the Shristi process, the Shristi chakra, right? In the last class. So far what we have explained is the Panchabhutas, right? So far everything, the Panchabhutas have come, and the Panchabhutas are all inanimate, right? Up to Shristi Tattva, everything, all the bhutas appears inanimate, and the influence of Prakriti has reached its climax. Okay, so plants and animals, cannot said to be inanimate. They have originated from these factors. They've originated from the Shristi Tattva. So what is going on is that the Shristi Tattva now takes the form of plants and animals, right? So this is really very amazing how the life emerges out of stone, right? We have said that before, that something cannot come from nothing, right? So a stone which appears inanimate, right? When we say inanimate, it means it appears completely crude, right? It appears completely crude. Okay, but the stone is actually not crude. Just like how Chandrasekhar Mahodaya just said, stone is not crude. It came from Purusha. It is looking crude, but it is not crude, right? So on one hand, we are saying these Panchabhutas do exist. They have relative reality. We cannot say that they are not there. Panchabhutas are not there. They are there. But like for instance, there are materialistic scientists, right, who think that all you can see, that is what is there. What you can see, that is what is there. If you can see something with your telescope or microscope, that is what is there. But if he's a true scientist, he has to understand that, or maybe like with an advanced scientist, right, they have to understand that there is more to these solid things. There is more to the solid things than what we can actually see, right? The stone is actually made of Purusha. The stone is a crudified form of Purusha. It means that it is made of Purusha and nothing else. And Purusha is vibrant with life, right? This ocean of consciousness is not just like the inert stuff. Consciousness is the essence of life, right? Consciousness is the essence of life, and the stone is made of that consciousness, right? And the stone is consciousness. And now that now what we have is that Kshiti Tattva has been progressively putting more and more, has been undergoing the pressure of Tamoguna. The Tamoguna has been progressively putting more and more pressure on the consciousness and condensing it more and more and more and more, right? It came from Chitta, then we got to the Akasha Tattva, then we got to the Vayu Tattva, then to the Agni Tattva, then to the Jala Tattva, and finally to the Kshiti Tattva. And then when we get down to Kshiti Tattva, then the Samoguna keeps on putting more and more pressure, right? So we got from something that was just space, Akasha, then we got down to something which is stone. So it is condensing that Purusha, condensing it further and further, and ultimately we got to that stone, right? So if the Tamoguna goes on putting more and more pressure on that stone, then what happens is that the stone has a structure and it has its own Shakti that we talked about. It has its own attractive force within it, which keeps it as a form, as an integrated form of a stone, right? What keeps the stone from just exploding into thin air, right? It has to have its own Shakti. It is attractive force within it that keeps it as a solid object that we can touch, right? But if the Tamoguna goes on putting more and more pressure on it, then ultimately that stone is going to lose its balance, it is going to lose its integrity, and it will explode. And we see that it happens in the space all the time, right? You know these stars, planets, they explode, right? So that happens. It's like a routine process, a routine phenomenon in space. So when that happens, so that is what we are looking in this entire Shristi chakra, right? That the Kshiti Tattva, the stone, then when the stone explodes, when it's not able to maintain its integrity because of the pressure of Tamoguna, then it goes back to where it came from. It goes back to Jala Tattva, it goes back to Agni Tattva, it goes back to Vayu Tattva, Akasha Tattva, and ultimately it goes as far as the Akasha Tattva. It cannot go any beyond that, right? It gets to the Akasha Tattva, then the Tamoguna starts the process of condensation again, and it goes back from Akasha Tattva down to the Kshiti Tattva. And then it keeps on putting further pressure and more pressure, and then ultimately it explodes. So this is how the right, this is the process actually, right? It comes to Kshiti Tattva and it's not able to withstand the pressure, and then it explodes, and then it goes back to the original Bhuta, right? And then again the process starts. It's like an ongoing cycle, it never ends, right? So ultimately at one point, rather than exploding, the Kshiti Tattva, rather than exploding, then what happens is that when there is Anukula Vatavaranam, when there is a conducive, congenial environment, when we say congenial environment means congenial temperature, congenial pressure of oxygen, all the different things that are needed for life, right? In such a circumstance, what happens is that instead of having the Jada Spota, instead of the explosion, then what happens when the pressure of Tamoguna goes on increasing and there is a congenial atmosphere, then Sattva Guna becomes predominant, right? When there is a congenial atmosphere and the pressure of Tamoguna increases, Sattva Guna becomes predominant. Rather than Tamoguna going on putting more and more in pressure, instead of exploding, Sattva Guna is there and there is a conducive environment, congenial environment, right? Anukula Vatavaranam becomes dominant. There you see an amazing thing happening, emanation of life from stone. So because this is not surprising, because the stone is not merely a stone, right? As Chandrasekhar Mohdey was rightly pointing out, a stone is not merely a stone. Stone is condensed Purusha, and Purusha is the very embodiment of life itself, right? So that Purusha got condensed into stone, and that stone is made of Purusha. It is not just stone. The stone has the capacity of prana in Sushupta Avastha. Prana is in Sushupta Avastha, right? When there is an Anukula Vatavaranam, then you get emergence of life out of that stone. But when you look at the modern science, they haven't still reached up to this state, because they're all very materialistically oriented. All they can see is a stone. They cannot imagine beyond that, right? That there is consciousness within the stone, or rather that stone is made of consciousness, and there is nothing else in it but consciousness. So that is beyond their conception. So they cannot be true scientists because of that, right? They're still having a long way to go. So because of that, they cannot understand where the universe comes from, and they cannot understand where life comes from. But here we can understand, right? You get the emergence of life out of stone, because the stone is not lifeless. The stone is not inert. It appears inert, but it is not. It is made of Purusha, nothing but Purusha. So in congenial circumstances, that is to say, proper temperature, proper oxygen, proper all the elements that are needed, water, everything that is needed, then you get emergence of life, which is really amazing, out of stone, out of Kshiti Tattva, right? And all that is needed is the Kshiti Tattva. So the thing to note is that life doesn't emerge out of Jala Tattva, life doesn't emerge out of Agni Tattva or the Vayu Tattva, doesn't emerge out of Akasha Tattva, right? So the thing is that why life cannot emerge out of these tattvas, why life emerges out of only the Kshiti Tattva, is because all the other tattvas other than the Kshiti Tattva, they do not have capacity to become separate entities, right? Jalam cannot hold itself as something separate. We have water in 2 glasses, and if you pour it, they all just become one. You cannot separate it. They just become one, right? Same thing with the Vayu, same thing with Akasha, same thing with Agni. When you have 2 sticks of fire, when you hold them together, they become one. So the Kshiti Tattva has but Kshiti Tattva can get separated. It has all the ingredients. When the congenial environment is there, it can get separated. When water is there, oxygen is needed, and many things which are needed, right? Vayu is needed. Appropriate Panchabhutas, when they're there, right? Then life emerges, and Kshiti Tattva is something which can exist as a separate entity, right? That the Kshiti Tattva has that essential characteristic. In addition to the Gandha Tanmatra, it has all the 5 Tanmatras. In addition to that, it is having the essential characteristic of being ability to separate, right? So that is what happens. You get the emergence of life out of stone. So stone is not lifeless, stone is not inert. It appears inert, but it is not. It is made of Purusha, nothing but Purusha. So that is what so if at 6 o'clock, if there is congenial environment and the Sattva Guna gets predominant, and then life will emerge. So right, so when you get the emergence of single celled organisms out of Kshiti Tattva, right, first the single celled organisms emerges, then it has a body, right? It has water within it as well, right? It has the single cell organism has all the Panchabhutas, but that Kshiti Tattva is essential. Without the Kshiti Tattva, you will not get life, right? You do not get life without Kshiti Tattva. That means Kshiti Tattva is very, very important. Life emerges only out of Kshiti Tattva when there is right temperature and all of those things that you need. So this is a very, very beautiful thing, that scientists don't have any idea, right? They don't understand how life comes from, right? Because we understand that life is there within the stone, because everything is, this whole Shristi is nothing but Purusha. So we understand how life comes from, and this kind of, you can understand it like, when you see this frog, sometimes when they're doing the they're doing the murtis or something, right, with a stone, they hit the stone and break it into 2. Sometimes you see the frog coming from the stone, from inside the stone the frog comes out, and then you wonder how come the frog went inside, how did it get there, and how did it come out? I mean, how was it surviving inside the stone, right? So you do see a lot of organisms coming out of stone, right? So there is life within stone, and because stone is nothing but Purusha, right? So that is what is explained over here. Any questions on this? Okay, so shall we so I also wanted to say that when we talked about the Shristi chakra, right, so that actually makes a lot of sense, how this movement from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock you need to understand that, and then from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock, from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, how the emergence of life, right, from the single cell organisms and then multicellular organisms, plants, animals, and then at 10 o'clock we have the human beings, right? So originally at 12 o'clock we had this ocean of nirguna purusha, and then when prakriti gave permission to work, then you get emergence of sattva guna, right? And then you get the creation of the first component of the cosmic mind, that is at 1 o'clock, the mahatattva. Then the rajoguna impacts the cosmic aham mahatattva, and then you get the aham tattva at 2 o'clock, and then tamoguna becomes predominant, and you get the creation of chitta at 3 o'clock, right? Then from there the tamoguna continues to dominate, and from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock tamoguna continues to dominate, and you get the progressively you get the panchabhutas from akasha to vayu, right? From 3 o'clock you get like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, up to 6 o'clock you get all the panchabhutas, right? That is the crudest manifestation. Shruti tattva is the crudest manifestation of the purusha, right, in the Shristi chakra. It cannot get cruder than that. That happens at 6 o'clock, which is like opposite of the 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock we have the nirguna purusha. So right, so then from 6 o'clock you can from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock is called as a sanchar dhara, and 6 o'clock if you don't have anukula vatavaranam we get vispotaha, that is negative sanchar dhara from 6 o'clock back to 3 o'clock. Then 3 o'clock you get the tamoguna again, and it goes down to 6 o'clock. It's like a classroom. We have new students coming all the time. And then at 6 o'clock if there is no anukula vatavaranam, it gets vispota and goes back to the bhutas, and then it keeps going like that. In the universe, this is an unending process of 3 o'clock down to 6 o'clock, right? 3 o'clock down to 6 o'clock is the unending process going from the subtle to crude, right? So this is a continuous process. So at 6 o'clock there is anukula vatavaranam. Instead of vispota, instead of explosion, there is an emergence of life out of stone, because stone is not inert, it is made of purusha. And this you get the emergence. This is an outrageous phenomenon of emergence of life out of stone, right? So right, that you don't get that at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock. You only get at 6 o'clock, right? And then from 6 o'clock begins the process of prati sanchar dhara, right? So it is like a roundabout, it's like an outbound trip, right? The sanchar dhara and then this prati sanchar dhara, return trip back to the subtle, from subtle to crude and then crude to subtle, right? So the movement from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, that is what is the Darwinian evolution. The 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock is the Darwinian evolution, where you have the where you at 10 o'clock you have the emergence of human beings. 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock you're going from one cell to multi-cell, from plants, then from water creatures, aquatic creatures, then you get the land creatures, and then you get more and more developed creatures. So this is all happening through struggle, through the sangarsha and samiti, through clash and cohesion. With struggle this is happening. Ultimately, it was originally he was a human, he was a monkey, and monkey finally became a human being. So like that there is a gradual evolution that is happening, emergence of evolution, right? And at ultimately 10 o'clock we have the emergence of human beings, right? So and the human beings have is a unique being which is having the opportunity of moving from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. None of the other entities have that opportunity. Only human beings have this opportunity of moving from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, right? All the other things, they live the life, other beings live the life of animals, they degenerate themselves and then they get reborn, right? So 10 o'clock we have the opportunity of moving forward to live a true human life, right? So those who don't live the true human life, they become animals, degenerate themselves, get reborn, right? They can get reborn even as a stone, right? Which we know. That is the overall picture, right? So at 10 o'clock mostly the human beings end up degenerating themselves and they get reborn as a cat or a dog or a monkey or a fish or a stone, depending on how much they degenerate themselves. And after a lot of struggle and evolution, again they get back to human beings, and ultimately when they one day when their eyes get opened, that what is our dharma, what is the human being's dharma, right? The first day we've been talking about the human being's dharma. The dharma of human beings is to seek and yearn for that infinite, and when they begin to live for the infinite, then begins their yoganishta jivanam. From there, we begin to do sadhana, right? So your mind, as you think, so you become, right? Your mind doesn't have a shape of its own, so the mind becomes to take the form of the infinite, right? So that is the movement from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. And 12 o'clock, right, you get yoga. You get yoga, which is the union of the unit consciousness with the cosmic consciousness. So this is our story. This is our story, and it is really a beautiful story. It is amazing story, right? And it is really a beautiful story, and I'm sure it must have cleared a lot of questions that we would have had. Where did I come from? How did I come from? Where am I going? Right? It's giving you a complete picture. What is your story? This is your story, right? There is no other story. This is our story, right? There is no other second story for us. This is our story. We're moving from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock. We're always constantly moving. There is constantly gatihi, right? We're constantly moving. Right? There is no point in time where there is no movement. They're all either going up or coming down. That is what is happening, right? So that is what we actually talked over here. Any questions? It's all clear. The Shristi process is
it's clear.
Okay, very good. So I actually want to end the session over here, and we'll take it from here in the next class. Okay. So tarhi धन्यवादः, नमस्कारः.
धन्यवादः भगिनी.
नमस्कारः.
नमस्कारः.